Whew. We thought Data's oh shit in Generations was pushing Star Trek's boundaries. Hello, I'm Phil. Welcome to my channel where I talk about all the geeky pop culture I like. Today, another review of Star Trek Picard, Episode 2. Maps. Was it Maps and Legends or Legends and Maps? I forget which way around it is. I may have even got one of them wrong. Maps was definitely in there. We're reviewing Episode 2 of Star Trek Picard. Anyway, that's what I'm doing. I'm reviewing every single week of Picard, so if you are here for that, if you enjoy that sort of stuff, then do, of course, hit that subscribe button and join me throughout the rest of the season. I'll be giving a brief overview of my thoughts without spoilers, and then I'll let you know when I get into the spoiler territory, so you don't have to worry about being spoiled if you've clicked on this and not seen the episode. But though seriously, it's there online, just go watch it. So first of all, I'll go through my general thoughts, non-spoilery type things, and then I'll get on to the spoilers a bit later on, but I'll give you plenty of warning, so if you haven't seen the episode, you can stop watching. Although, just, go watch the episode. It's available online now. Amazon Prime or CBS All Access, depending on your country. So this kind of felt a little bit like a filler episode. Or maybe filler's the wrong word. Maybe more it felt like a setup episode. More so than last week's episode, which was the first episode. And that had some setup. It had a lot of setup. And it had this sort of slower pace about it. But it kind of feels like it slowed down even another notch beyond that this episode. And I'm not sure how I feel about it, because I think all the stuff in it was absolutely necessary, and there's still some really good stuff in it. But we got a lot more character moments last week. A lot more really... Not that we didn't get any last week, but we got some great ones last week. We got Picard with Data. We got Picard with Dahj. Both of those pairings had really good scenes. Several really good scenes. Whereas in this episode, I can only think of really one scene that I went, wow, I'm really gripped by the dynamic between two characters on screen right now. So it kind of feels a bit of a step away from that. Also, last week we had some action. There wasn't really any action this week. So overall, I wouldn't rate it as highly as I did last week. Last week, the excitement of new Star Trek with Jean-Luc Picard in may have clouded my judgment on it. I haven't actually watched it for a second time, so maybe if I went back and rewatched it, I would notice things that I didn't because I was too engrossed in the excitement. I don't know. But this feels like a bit of a like I say, a filler setup episode sandwiched in between the more exciting stuff, both from a dramatic angle and also a action angle as well. But it does actually feel like we're starting to get somewhere towards the end of this episode, and I can probably predict what will happen next episode, and then we will probably be out into space, and it'll have maybe a slightly different feel to the rest of the season after that. These 3 episodes kind of feel like they are forming the first act of a movie. They feel like they're the introduction bit of it. The pilot, if you will, is kind of like these 3 episodes, and I think it was these 3 episodes that were screened to audiences at the premiere, so that kind of makes sense. This is all the sort of setup 3 episodes, and then we'll have 7 episodes after that to really dig into the main plot and the main story. So the stuff with Picard, it was good. I can't fault the acting or anything like that, but it just felt like the pace slowed down a bit this week. So I'm going to start getting into spoilers now, so if you haven't seen the episode, maybe tune out now, go watch it, and come back later. Let's start with the opening scene, because I thought that was fantastic. It was a really good, I thought, wise choice to have a bit of insight into the background 14 years ago, what happened on Mars. We'd already had a little bit of that in the prequel short treks, Children of Mars. We saw a bit of the context around the attack, but and we've been told about it a bit last week, a bit more about it, but it was really good. I think a really good choice to start the episode here by showing it to us. I think if they'd started with it last week, it would have felt too distant from the character of Picard for starting the series. It was definitely the right choice to start with him and Data in that episode, and to not focus on this away from Picard so much that episode, but it was a good choice to delve into it at the beginning of this episode. The visuals were great. I thought it was very cinematic in scope, in terms of the attack, and the androids, they're creepy, aren't they? The synths, they're very creepy, and there's a big mystery being built up there, because who took them over in order to do this? There was that thing with his eyes that sort of went almost like they were being hacked or something from externally. So it's going to be really interesting as that mystery unravels to find out what is going on there. I want to make a note about the theme music, because I don't know, what do people think about the theme music just generally? Because I'm not sold on it. I can't even think about it now. Like every other Trek theme, regardless of how much you like it or where you'd rank it in terms of other Trek theme, I can remember and hum at least the main bit of every other Trek theme. This isn't sticking in my head at all. It's lovely and ethereal and everything, but it just, as a theme, it's not really got the punch that I think Picard theme should have. It might just be me. I don't know. I love the visuals that go with it. I just don't think the theme has anything. And in a way, Discovery's theme is very ethereal too, but that seems to have a bit more of a punch to it, and it's got this moment where it crescendos and stuff, and I really like the Discovery theme. This one just doesn't quite work. They're kind of clearly going for a similar aesthetic in terms of the visuals and the opening sequence. It just, for me, it's not quite working. But, I might be alone in that. What do you think? Does it work for you? Yeah, so a lot of the stuff this week was set up. It was exposition. We've got a lot of stuff from the between Picard getting information from his Romulan house guests, the people that live with him, the two ex-Tal Shiar agents. And a lot of that, it was very well delivered as exposition. But so much of this episode was exposition that it kind of, I think, hindered the pace of it quite a lot. Also, why is it just me, or am I the only one that finds there being an Irish-sounding Romulan a bit strange? Why does she sound Irish? Is this some quirk of the universal translator that has decided to give the Romulan a Irish accent, or has she learnt English from an Irish person? It's just slightly strange. It kind of goes with my criticism last week of the Romulan on the Borg cube. He kind of doesn't sound like a Romulan to me, and similarly, I think it's probably mainly because of the Irish accent and also her more jovial tone, which probably goes along with the Irish accent, that she just doesn't quite feel Romulan to me. Again, like I said last week with the other guy on the Borg cube, this might not bother me at all in 5 episodes time once I've got used to the characters, but at the moment it's just slightly taking me out of it, and I'm thinking they don't really sound that Romulan. One bit I really did like about this episode was the conflict between Picard and Starfleet, and the Admiral in particular. You had the setup to this was him trying to get medical approval, and that scene was quite good as well, although I don't think the dynamic between him and the Doctor was particularly massively compelling. It wasn't bad, but it didn't have any of the kind of like really gripping moments that him and Daj had last week, or him and Data had. But it was an interesting scene, again, from an exposition angle. It was mostly exposition, but we got information we needed. And we had the stuff about him having some kind of neurological disease that has yet to be identified, but inevitably will lead to his death. Which, I don't know how I feel about. It's a little bit cliche. So we'll see how it goes. It might turn out alright, but as well as it just being generally cliche, also kind of feels like Patrick Stewart's done it already with Logan, and being Professor X in his older years, being a bit losing his cognitive thought, and suffering from some kind of neurological thing. It kind of feels like maybe it wouldn't be so bad if the actor hadn't done something very similar in his other iconic role. But I don't know, it could be a little bit cliche, racing against the clock and stuff. But then again, might work out. I'm not going to judge it too harshly at this early point. So the thing with serialized storytelling is you get things that you think, oh well, I don't know how I feel about that, because It kind of depends on what comes later in the story. But then, after getting the all clear from his doctor to go on this mission, he then butts heads with Starfleet itself. He goes to visit an admiral to ask her to reinstate him and to give him a ship to complete his mission, one last mission, but she outrightly denies it. And I love this scene between them because it escalates to hostility so quickly, and I kind of can see both sides. From the one hand, we as the audience know Picard is right to want to go on this mission, so we are on his side, absolutely. So we are supporting him. But also, you know, she's right when she says that, you know, how fucking arrogant is he? Or was it fucking hubris? That was it. Fucking hubris. Demonetized. To get to just walk in the office and expect to just be given a ship just like that, just because he's Picard. Yeah, he's special to us and he did a lot for the Federation, but that I kind of get where she's coming from. And we see later on that she doesn't appear, at least, to be a bad guy. She's unaware of the other Starfleet people. She contacts the other admiral, or the Commodore, wasn't it, who is seemingly working against the Federation or working with the Romulans, and doesn't seem to be aware of that fact. So she's not a bad person necessarily. She just butts heads personality-wise with Picard, and it's a really interesting reaction. And in the best way of Star Trek, it gives us both sides of the argument, and you might come down on one side or the other, but it gives kind of both sides. And she's right, he is absolutely arrogant, but he is right, and he does need a ship, and he absolutely should go and investigate it. So that will lead us off on our finding a rogue crew to go and do it. But it was a really good scene, and probably the one scene I would say in this episode that I was really gripped by the character dynamic between the two people in this episode. Couple of nice things I noticed, it's sort of just in scenes in general. Having the Isaac Asimov book was obviously a lovely reference to AI and stuff, because Isaac Asimov had his whole robot series, so that was a nice little nod. It was lovely seeing his old comm badge again as he put it on. Not the Next Generation one, obviously, because that's not what he would have had when he retired. He had the although in the Countdown comics he has a different badge. So, well, it's the last badge we saw him have on the Enterprise E anyway, and so it was nice to see him get that out and a little nod as well. I'm very intrigued by where all the various plot lines are going. We don't know much yet, but we're getting little bits of information each time. It appears that Starfleet has been infiltrated by a Romulan, at least one Romulan agent. I am not sure yet if the person that is obviously meant to look like a Vulcan is a Vulcan and is just sympathetic to the Romulans, is a Vulcan and doesn't know it's a Romulan, but is still working against Picard's interests for their own reasons, or if that's a Romulan as well, just disguised as a Vulcan. I don't know. And the dynamic there is interesting as well, because between the two, let's call them bad guys for the moment, who are in Starfleet, because seemingly in the scene in her office, the Commodore seems to be the one in charge there. But then once we get the undercover Romulan agent onto the Borg cube, it's very different, and the way she speaks about the Commodore sounds like she's the one manipulating her. So it's very interesting to see where that dynamic goes, and actually who's in charge there, and who's manipulating who, and who's in charge of who, and are these different, do they both have different competing agendas? What's going on? I like that mystery being set up. It'd be interesting to see how deep it goes. Is it a whole load of people? Is it going to be I saw Lore Reloaded refer to it as Hydra in Starfleet. Is it that? Or is it more just like one or two people that are in a couple of key positions that are working against the Federation? Or maybe in their own minds, like Section 31, working for the Federation, just with some questionable tactics. Then we've got the Borg Cube. I don't really have much to say about the stuff on the Borg Cube. It was good to see the dynamic between Darja's sister, still can't remember her name, and the Romulan guy who is he in charge? I kind of got the feeling that when she said, "Oh, you have to get the somebody's permission," he was like, "No, I don't." I think that because he's that person, maybe, and he just hasn't told her. I don't know, but that it was good to see, but there wasn't that much there. We just got a little bit of a tease about what's going on there. They're dissecting some Borg, removing the the Borg stuff from the Borg that they find there. The Borg are still walking around, but they're disconnected from the collective. That's the kind of gist I got. You had the so many 5,000 days since the last assimilation and all that. It was kind of all stuff that made me wonder about what was coming, but there wasn't much to it apart from the relationship between Daja's sister. God, why can't I remember her name? And this guy who I also can't remember the name of. I should have put it in my notes. That's interesting because I kind of get the feeling, and again, it feels a little bit cliche, but I get the feeling they're going down the route of him falling for her and therefore maybe betraying his sister and the Romulan cause, whatever it is that he's a part of. Maybe he'll come to the good side eventually. Who knows? It would be a little bit cliche, but again, it might work. Cliches can work sometimes. You just got to wait and see how they pan out. So next week it looks like we're going to be getting a crew and heading into space for Picard. I imagine probably a detour next week to see Riker as well. That seems to, from the trailers, that looked like it was before he left Earth. So I'm guessing that's going to happen next week as well. Be nice to see them. Overall, this wasn't an unenjoyable episode, but the pace really did slow this week to the point where, I mean, it's a slow show anyway, much slower than a lot of Star Trek shows, certainly a lot slower than Discovery, and that I think is a good thing, generally. And I think the sort of pace and balance of the action versus the emotional character drama versus the slower moments all worked really well last week. This week, it kind of feels like it veered slightly too slow, but they did have a lot of setup they needed to get in. Hopefully now that's done, we can push forward and get more of the great character stuff and some great action as well, probably from the younger cast. Anyway, that's my thoughts. What did you think? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll be here next week for another review. I also review Doctor Who every week, if that's something you might enjoy, so check out my reviews of Series 12 of Doctor Who, which are on my channel as well. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like, share, subscribe, all that jazz, and I'll see you next week. Bye.